Welcome back to Driftwood Stories, where the night stirs softly and ancient winds carry us into legends older than memory. Tonight, let us drift together across the silver seas of time to a world where the gods walked quietly among mortals and where shadows were edged with starlight. A world of whispers, marble ruins, and the hush of forgotten magic. In this place, part dream, part memory, a boy is born beneath a rain of golden light. His name is Perseus, and though he does not yet know it, the stars have written his path in ink as old as the sky. He will travel far, beyond the edges of the known world, to face a creature so terrible, even the bravest dare not speak her name. Medusa, the Gorgon, she whose gaze turns all to stone. But this is not a tale of monsters alone. It is the story of a boy who listens, who learns to walk softly, to trust the quiet voices of the gods, and to face what others fear, not for glory, but for love. So now, close your eyes if you wish, and let the slow tides of myth carry you. Breathe deep, settle in, and let us begin. Chapter 1. A Boy Among Waves. Long ago, in a land where the marble hills met the restless sea, there was a kingdom of bright banners and heavy hearts. Its ruler, King Perseus of Argos, held within his halls a single treasure, his daughter, Danae. Her beauty was said to rival the dawn, her voice like the hush before a summer storm. But she was not free. No songs, no suitors, no sunlight beyond her chamber walls. For Perseus, proud and fearful, had once sought wisdom from the oracle of Delphi, that sacred place where mortals touch the breath of gods. And there, in the curling incense and still silence, he was given a prophecy. You shall not have a son, but your daughter shall, and her son will be the end of you. Terror clutched the king's heart like winter frost, and so, in desperation, he locked Danae away, not in cruelty, but in fear. A tower of bronze was built, windowless and sealed high upon the cliffs. No man could enter, no path could lead to her, but fate, as ever, finds its way. One twilight, as the moon rose over the wine-dark sea, a golden shimmer stirred in the sky. It was not lightning nor flame, but something softer, a warmth like memory, like the hush of forgotten music. Down it drifted, like sunlight in deep water, through the very stones of the tower. And there, alone beneath the stars, Danae beheld the radiance. Zeus, king of the gods, had come not in roar or thunder, but in golden light, for even gods may step quietly when they choose. And from that meeting of mortal and divine, a child was born, a boy. He had eyes the colour of morning tides and a laugh that seemed to echo from the very sky. Danae named him Perseus, which means the one who destroys, though she whispered the name not in dread, but in wonder. For she saw not destruction in her son, but the gentle fire of destiny. But Perseus, hearing of the child, was not soothed. He dared not spill his grandson's blood. The gods would not allow it. Instead, he ordered a coffin of wood, sealed tight with iron bands. Into it Danae and her infant son were placed. Then, with a wave of his hand, they were cast into the sea, and the waves, oh, the waves, took them not as prisoners, but as guests. For the sea remembers. It had watched the rise of gods and the fall of kings, and now it cradled mother and child in arms of foam and salt, guiding their vessel with the care of an old nurse. Days passed, perhaps weeks, and still the sea kept them safe, rocking them gently beneath constellations that turned slowly in the sky above. At last they came to shore, not on the grand marble steps of Argos, but on a quiet island far from power and palace. Seriphos, a place of fishermen, olive trees, and winds that whispered only to the waves. There, on the beach, they were found by Dictys, brother to the island's king, but humble in heart. He was casting his nets when he saw the chest, broken open like a seashell, and inside the woman and her son, blinking against the light. Dictys took them in, not for reward, not for glory, but because kindness often wears no crown. He gave them a place by the cliffs, near the sea, and raised Perseus like his own, teaching him the ways of nets, stars, and weather, the rhythm of tides and the hush of early dawns. Perseus grew tall and strong, with shoulders shaped by stone and sea spray, but he was no braggart. He listened more than he spoke, and his eyes often drifted toward the horizon, as though he were waiting for something the rest of the world could not see. Danae would tell him stories by lamplight, of gods and monsters, of wisdom and wrath. She spoke of Athena, calm-eyed and wise, of Hermes, whose sandals kissed the wind, of Medusa, the cursed one with hair like snakes and eyes like polished stone. She spoke not to frighten, but to remind him the world is wide, and its truths are not always gentle. In the night, Perseus would lie on the roof and stare into the stars, tracing silent paths across the sky. Sometimes he dreamt of great wings, of a shining blade, of a face both terrible and sorrowful, but always he awoke with calm in his chest, as though the dreams were not warnings but promises. And the stars, ever so patient, watched him still. He was not born to remain upon this quiet island forever. The gods, it is said, choose softly, but they do choose. And Perseus, the boy born of golden light and silent waves, would soon be called upon, not just to listen to tales of old, but to become one himself. Chapter 2. A task of stone and shadow. Years passed on the quiet island of Seriphos, where the sea met the sky in endless conversation. Perseus grew into a young man, broad-shouldered and steady-eyed, his hands calloused by nets and stone, his heart quiet yet restless. But peace, like the tide, does not always stay, for Seriphos, though gentle in name, bore a serpent in its palace, King Polydectes, brother to kind Dictys, yet nothing like him. Where Dictys saw with the eyes of kindness, Polydectes looked through the veil of ambition. He had long watched Danae with a hunger, not of love, but of possession. And Perseus, grown and vigilant, stood always between the king and his mother, like a stone in the stream. Polydectes, cloaking his desire in honeyed words, plotted a path to remove the boy without drawing the wrath of gods or kin. One day he gathered the island's men for a feast, under the guise of courting another woman, a princess from far away, whose name changed with each telling. As custom dictated, each guest must bring a gift for the bride-to-be, horses, silver, and fine cloth. But Perseus, poor in gold and groomed in sea salt, brought only himself. "I have no gift, Lord," he said, standing beneath the flickering torchlight, "but name your desire, and I shall bring it." The hall hushed, and Polydectes, with a smile carved from marble, said, "Then bring me the head of Medusa." There was laughter, soft and cruel, a jest, surely, a tale from firelight and mother's warnings. Medusa, the Gorgon, the serpent-haired monster whose eyes could freeze flesh and bone into stone, a creature so cursed by the gods that even the bravest dared not speak her name at sea. But Perseus did not flinch, not because he was foolish, but because in his heart something stirred, a whisper, a wind. He bowed. "Then I shall." When dawn touched the cliffs of Seriphos, Perseus set out, not with an army, not with coin, but with the clothes on his back and the prayers of his mother tucked into his thoughts. And he was not long alone. On the forested paths beyond the village, the air grew still, a stillness not of absence, but of presence, the kind of hush that comes when something ancient watches. From among the olive trees stepped a figure cloaked in white, eyes grey as moonstone, voice calm as a temple breeze. It was Athena. Tall, serene, and unshaken by time, she regarded him not as a boy, but as one chosen. She did not speak of pride or punishment. She spoke of strategy, of care, of clarity, and she gave him a gift, a shield of polished bronze, so smooth it could reflect stars. A shield not for battle, but for looking without looking. For Medusa's gaze turns all who meet it to stone, she said, her voice like still water. But a reflection cannot be petrified. Before he could kneel in thanks, a second wind stirred, quick and light as laughter. Then came Hermes, the wing-footed messenger. His eyes glinted with mischief and mercy, and in his hands more gifts, winged sandals that would carry Perseus through sky and shadow, and a curved blade, sharp enough to split dreams. "You will need more," Hermes murmured, "but these will take you to those who know." And with that the gods vanished into mist, as quietly as they came. So Perseus began his journey. Across hills of chalk and river stones he flew, skimming the clouds like a bird with purpose. He passed over temples and tombs, cities and ruins swallowed by time and sun. He saw the bones of empires and the laughter of children, and still he flew onward, guided by instinct and something more. At last he reached a land where the earth cracked and whispered, where trees stood twisted, and the stars hung heavy like watchful eyes. Here lived the Grey, 3 ancient sisters, grey from birth, with only a single eye and tooth between them. They passed both from hand to hand, arguing endlessly, peering into shadows. Perseus landed gently, the sandals silent on the dust. He watched them from behind a rock, waiting until the eye was past. Then, with the speed of Hermes, he snatched it. The sisters screamed, groping blindly in the dark. "I mean no harm," Perseus called, holding the eye high. "But I seek the path to the Hesperides and to Medusa." They hissed and muttered, weaving riddles and curses, but they feared the darkness more than they hated the boy. So they spoke. They told him of the nymphs of the west, guardians of sacred relics. From them Perseus would find the final gifts, the helm of Hades, which grants invisibility, and the location of the Gorgons, who dwell at the edge of the world where time forgets to pass." He returned the eye gently, and they fell back into their muttering like waves against a dead shore. And so Perseus flew again, farther than maps dared stretch, into lands where the air smelled of starlight and iron. There, in a grove glowing with eternal dusk, the Hesperides awaited, cloaked in petals and secrets. They gave him what he sought, the helm cool and silent in his hands. And they gave him a warning. Medusa was not always a monster, one whispered. Remember that now armed with sword, sandals, shield, and helm, Perseus stood upon the cliff at the edge of the world where the sea met silence and night never quite left the sky. Below him, in a valley of stone statues, frozen mid-run, mid-cry, mid-prayer, the Gorgons slept, and among them, in a hollow carved by fate itself, lay Medusa. Hair coiled like serpents, face beautiful and terrible all at once. Cursed, not born. Feared, not understood. Perseus did not move. He listened to the wind, and he waited for the stillness within himself to return, the one that sounded like the sea at dawn. Chapter 3. The Edge of the World. The wind at the edge of the world did not howl. It whispered. It wound itself around ancient stones and forgotten names, stirring only dust and silence. Time itself seemed to wait here, paused, breath held, as if even the stars dared not blink. Perseus stood cloaked in invisibility, the helm of Hades cool upon his brow. Beneath him, stretched out like a dream gone still, lay the valley of the Gorgons. He had reached the place no map dared chart, the land beyond endings, where the world unravelled into night and the sea fell off the edge of knowing, the place where monsters were banished, where even the gods rarely lingered. There, among scattered rocks and the statues of men long dead, the Gorgons lay in uneasy sleep. 3 sisters, ancient, scaled and bound in curse. 2 were immortal. 1 was not, Medusa. Perseus watched from above, his breath steady, his hands wrapped around the bronze shield Athena had given him, its surface polished like still water. He dared not look directly. Around Medusa's head, serpents slithered in slow rhythm, not wild, not wrathful, but heavy with sleep. Her breathing, though even, carried weight, as if each breath remembered something lost. She was not the monster he had imagined as a child beneath the stars. She was something else, a woman once mortal, once priestess, once beloved by the gods, then cursed by one of them, twisted for what was done to her, not by her. Her beauty turned to terror, her silence to screams unending. Perseus did not know the whole of her story, but he could feel its ache. Still, he had come not in vengeance nor hatred, but because fate had called and a vow had been made. His mother's freedom, his own path, the quiet urging of Athena's hand. He stepped silently from the sky, the winged sandals landing soft upon stone. One wrong breath, and she would wake. One wrong glance, and he would never breathe again. So he did not look. He crouched beside her, using only the shield's reflection. The mirrored bronze held her shape, coiled, beautiful, sorrowed. The blade in his hand trembled slightly, not from fear but reverence. He whispered no words. There was no battle cry, no flourish, only a single moment of stillness. And then the blade fell, like the hush before a tide breaks, a single breath, and the deed was done. From her neck, blood like liquid night spilled onto the stone. And from that blood something stirred. From death, as from myth, life bloomed. Two creatures leapt forth, children of Medusa's ancient power. First, Chrysaor, golden warrior born full-grown. Then, on wings of moonlight, Pegasus, the winged horse, bright as starlight on marble. They rose into the air with no cry, no rage, only silence. Pegasus, in particular, met Perseus's gaze, not with hatred, but with something older, as though he understood, as though he had been waiting. Then they flew into the clouds, and Perseus stood alone with the head of Medusa, wrapped now in cloth, hidden from light and sight. It pulsed with quiet magic. Her eyes still shone even in death. They would turn all to stone still, not through cruelty, but through the weight of divine grief. Perseus placed the head in a sack, slung it behind him, and stepped into the sky once more. But the air felt heavier. The sandals beat against the wind, but his thoughts lingered below, with the woman cursed into silence. The world would speak of him now as a slayer, a hero, a son of Zeus. But in that moment, Perseus felt none of that. He felt only the wind and the hush and the weight of the task done. He flew eastward, toward the rising sun, toward home, but the gods had more for him yet. For not far from the land of the Gorgons, chained to the rocks of a craggy shore, a figure stirred. A girl, alone, trembling, her skin kissed by sea spray, her eyes on the horizon. Andromeda. But her tale, too, is waiting in the wind. Chapter 4, Flight and Flame. Perseus soared eastward, the wind now warmer beneath his wings. The sky, once dark with solemn purpose, slowly bloomed with the soft light of dawn. Clouds drifted below him like ghostly ships, and above, the stars dimmed one by one, their watch now past. The head of Medusa hung quiet and hidden in its cloth, tucked against his side. Its power hummed, not loudly, not violently, but like a presence that refused to leave. A reminder of sorrow, sacrifice, and the silence that follows victory. He was not returning as the boy who had left Seriphos, but his journey was not yet over. As the sea below rippled with light, Perseus glimpsed something strange. A solitary rock, rising from the waves like a broken tooth, and chained to it, a figure. Pale arms, dark hair, a glint of silver about the wrists, a girl, still and small against the roaring tide. Without thought, Perseus angled his flight downward. Winds howled, the surf broke violently upon the stone, but she did not flinch. She stood with eyes closed as if waiting not for rescue, but for release. As he landed upon the rock, his voice cut through the roar. "Who are you, bound here beneath the sky?" The girl opened her eyes, wide, calm, and deep as river glass. "My name is Andromeda," she said, "daughter of Cepheus, king of Ethiopia, and I am to be sacrificed to the sea." Her voice was quiet but clear, not pleading, not afraid, accepting, like a bird who has known its cage too long. Perseus frowned. Why? She looked toward the horizon, where thunderheads brewed. "My mother," she whispered, "boasted that I was more beautiful than the sea nymphs." The Nereids heard, and so did Poseidon. He sent a monster from the depths to punish our shores. My people begged the oracle for guidance. The answer was this: to chain me here. Perseus looked down. The waves swelled, rising in rhythm. A shape darkened the waters, vast, serpentine. It was coming. He stepped before her, drawing the curved blade once gifted by Hermes. No gods have spoken to me of leaving you to die. Stand behind me, I will face what comes. Andromeda blinked, as if unsure she had heard him correctly. Then, softly, she smiled. The sea erupted. A creature, scaled and horned, as ancient as storms, rose with a roar that shattered the calm. Its maw opened wide, teeth like spears, eyes burning with the deep fury of forgotten places. But Perseus did not run. He rose into the air, his sandals humming with divine flight. The monster lunged, but he veered, graceful as a gull. Then, from his cloak, he drew the head of Medusa. And he turned, not toward himself, but toward the beast. The eyes of stone met the eyes of flame, and all went still. In a single breathless moment, the sea monster froze, mid-lunge, mid-roar, turned to stone by a curse born of sorrow. It crashed into the water, and the waves swallowed it like a broken statue. Only silence remained. Perseus landed beside Andromeda, the head quickly veiled again. Her eyes, wide now with wonder, met his. "You carry gods with you," she said. He shook his head, gently. "Only gifts and burdens." With care he broke the chains that bound her. She stepped free, her wrists raw, her breath shaky. He did not ask her to come with him, but she did. Together they flew, not as prince and prize, but as two who had seen the edge of the world and returned. They passed over kingdoms in silence, over rivers curled like serpents, and valleys that sang in birdsong. And soon the island of Seriphos appeared, nestled in its fold of cliffs, the sea glinting gently around it. But not all was as they had left it. The air was heavy, the sky watched. At the docks they landed quietly. It was Dictys who found them first, eyes wide, heart full, voice trembling. "The king has grown crueler," he whispered. "Your mother is kept like a prisoner. His court laughs louder now. He waits only to be rid of you." Perseus felt the silence in his chest return, not cold, not angry, but steady. He walked through the streets, past those who remembered him as a boy, and now watched him as something more. The court was in feast again. Polydectes sat upon a raised seat, surrounded by jesters and flatterers. When Perseus entered, he did not speak. He reached into the sack and drew out the head of Medusa, just enough for her eyes to see. In an instant, the court fell silent. Laughter turned to gasps, and then to stone. Polydectes was the first. His final smirk forever frozen, mouth open in mid-boast. One by one, those who had mocked or harmed, those who had built cruelty into comfort, they stood no more. Only silence remained. Perseus covered the head again, gently, and turned to Dictys. "The throne is yours if you wish it," he said softly. Dictys said nothing. He only nodded, and Perseus stepped out into the sun, where Danae waited with tears not of sorrow, but of homecoming. Chapter 5, The Shield Reflects. Peace settled over Seriphos like mist at dawn. After the fall of Polydectes, the island exhaled a long-held breath. Markets returned to laughter, the scent of olives rose from sun-warmed groves, and children once more played among the stones. Danae walked freely, her smile no longer guarded, her voice no longer hushed. Dictys, the humble fisherman, was crowned king, not in splendour but in simplicity. He wore no golden circlet, but the people trusted him more than any jewel. He ruled with a quiet steadiness, as though the tides themselves had given him their rhythm. And Perseus, though honoured by all, he did not stay long within the halls of rule, for something inside him, shaped by long skies, deep silences, and divine whispers, stirred with restlessness. The hero who had flown across the world, who had faced monsters and returned not broken but wiser, knew his journey was not yet complete. The gods had given him gifts, yes, but they were not his to keep forever. One still morning, with sea mist clinging to the trees and the cicadas just beginning their hymn, Perseus and Andromeda stood once more at the shore, their fingers entwined, their hearts steady. They would fly together, not to escape, not to seek more glory, but to return what had been borrowed, to give thanks. Their journey took them westward, beneath skies painted in rose and lavender, over forests deep and dreaming, across rivers that curled like ink across parchment. First, they came again to the grove of the Hesperides, the timeless garden where twilight never faded. There, under golden boughs heavy with divine fruit, Perseus laid down the helm of Hades. It shimmered once, then grew still, as if even it were weary, longing to sleep among trees and stars. The air around them softened, as though the grove itself sighed in peace. Then they journeyed to a quiet place where two rivers met, one flowing backward, the other forward, and there, beneath a sky full of ravens and laurel trees, Athena awaited. Tall, still, and watchful, the goddess stood beside a pool that reflected neither sun nor moon, only truth. Perseus stepped forward and removed the bronze shield from his back. Then, gently, he unwrapped the head of Medusa, no longer frightening but solemn. Her eyes, though closed in death, still shimmered with the echo of ancient grief. He knelt, offering both to Athena without a word. The goddess accepted the shield and the head with grace, her hands cool as marble, her gaze not harsh, but full of memory. She was not only a monster, Athena said softly. She was once a servant of mine, a guardian of temples. Her curse was not her fault, but it became her fate. Perseus bowed his head. Athena placed the head upon her aegis, her sacred shield, not as a trophy, but as a warning. Let those who raise harm without cause see their own reflection and falter, she murmured. Then she turned to Perseus, and her eyes held something more than praise, something almost tender. You did not kill for power. You did not fly for pride. You listened, and that, among mortals and gods, is rare. Perseus asked for no reward, but Athena offered him a gift anyway, not of weapon or armour, but of understanding, a vision of what might grow from his journey. A family, a quiet place, a long life, not as a tale shouted in halls, but as one whispered beneath blankets at bedtime. He accepted it with a nod, and so Perseus and Andromeda returned to the earth, to Tiryns, where the hills were soft and the rivers patient. There they built a home of stone and song, And over time the home became a village, and the village a kingdom, not one of conquest, but of care. They raised children, and their children raised questions. Perseus answered not with boasts, but with stories, of a golden rain, of winged sandals, of a girl who smiled even as the tide rose. He told them of monsters, not to frighten, but to teach. That monsters are not always born. Sometimes they are made, and sometimes they are simply misunderstood. And when his hair turned silver and his sword lay beneath dust and ivy, Perseus walked each morning among the fig trees, whispering thanks to the breeze. Andromeda grew older too, not fading but glowing ever softer, like moonlight reflected on calm water. Their love was not the love of epics, but of shared cups of honeyed tea, of hands that remembered, of laughter that needed no words. And in time, when Perseus left the world of men, the gods remembered. They placed him in the stars, not with a sword raised high, but with a shield held forward, a mirror to remind all who look upward that true courage is not in the blade, but in reflection, that mercy is the highest strength, that listening, truly listening, is the first step toward wisdom. Beside him in the night sky, Pegasus gallops still, born from sorrow yet soaring in joy. And somewhere in the hush between constellations, if you gaze long enough, you may find Medusa, not as a curse, but as a memory. Her story stitched into starlight, her silence no longer feared but understood. And if you look softly, just so, you may catch a glimpse of yourself in that mirrored shield, still, listening, becoming